three Messerschmitt Bf-109s closing from above. A lone American P-47 Thunderbolt limping through German airspace, hydraulics failing, oil pressure dropping. The pilot reaches for the gear lever and his hand freezes. He forgot to retract on takeoff. The wheels are still down, hanging like anchors in the slipstream, creating drag that should make him an easy kill. But in the next 30 seconds, that mistake will save his life and change escape doctrine for the next 80 years. Bavaria, 1944. The sky over southern Germany is not forgiving. It smells of cordite and burning fuel. The cockpit of a P-47 at 12,000 feet becomes a pressure cooker of fear and adrenaline. Radio chatter crackles with static and desperation. Below, the patchwork farmland of the Reich stretches endless and hostile. This is the heart of enemy territory where downed pilots disappear into Stalag camps or shallow graves. The Luftwaffe controls these skies in segments, and their pilots are experienced, disciplined, and utterly without mercy. American bomber crews are hemorrhaging aircraft at rates that keep war planners awake through the night. Every mission costs machines and men. Replacements arrive weekly, undertrained and overconfident. Some last 5 sorties, some last 1. Into this grinder flies a 19-year-old pilot named Merritt Hayes Corbett. He does not look like someone who belongs in a fighter cockpit. Thin, pale, with wire-rimmed glasses that fog in humidity and a habit of calculating fuel consumption in his head during combat. A graduate of a small technical college in Vermont with a degree in civil engineering, he speaks in careful, measured sentences as if every word might be structurally unsound. His squadron mates call him the professor behind his back. Some call him the slide rule kid. Merritt reads flight manuals the way other men read dime novels. While others play cards in the barracks, he sits alone sketching force diagrams and lift coefficients in a battered notebook. He asks questions that irritate his commanding officers. Questions like, what if drag is not always the enemy? What if slowing down is sometimes safer than speeding up? He does not fit the archetype. Fighter pilots are supposed to be instinctive, aggressive, fearless. Merritt is methodical, cautious, and perpetually second-guessing. This makes him a problem in the eyes of the brass. Not dangerous to the enemy, dangerous to himself. They cycle him through assignments like a part that does not quite fit. He flies wingman positions, fills gaps in formations, racks up hours without commanding respect. It is a quiet exile. The war is full of men like this, competent enough to keep flying. Too strange to trust with leadership. Then his hydraulics fail over Bavaria. His landing gear will not retract. And 3 German fighters smell blood. Merritt's hand tightens on the stick. His mind goes quiet. The equations take over. He has perhaps 15 seconds before the first Messerschmitt opens fire. Every instinct screams to dive, to run, to use gravity for speed. But Merritt does something nobody expects. He throttles back. He lets the drag take hold, and the hunters suddenly cannot understand their prey. The prisoner of war camps, scattered across Germany and occupied Poland, operate on mathematics as brutal as any battlefield equation. Stalag Luft 3 holds 10,000 Allied airmen behind double barbed wire fences and guard towers spaced every 100 yards. Escape attempts occur weekly. Recapture rates exceed 95%. Executions follow recapture in roughly 1 out of every 3 cases. The Geneva Convention exists on paper. In practice, it is selectively enforced. The camps smell of unwashed bodies, boiled cabbage, and latrine trenches that never quite drain. The sound is constant and grinding. Guard boots on gravel, dog barks during roll call, the metallic clang of gates opening and closing. Beneath it all, the whispered conversations of men plotting freedom they will likely never see. Allied intelligence estimates that fewer than 2% of POWs who attempt escape successfully return to friendly lines. The rest are shot during the attempt, recaptured within 48 hours, or simply vanish into the German countryside where local police and Hitler Youth patrols ensure cooperation through fear. The doctrine among senior prisoners is clear. Escape is a duty, but it is also suicide unless conditions are perfect. Most men wait. They endure. They count days and survive on Red Cross parcels and the hope that the war will end before they break. The guards are not stupid. They rotate shifts to prevent pattern recognition. They vary inspection schedules. They employ informants among the prisoners, men desperate enough to trade information for cigarettes or extra rations. Tunnel attempts are detected through seismograph sensors buried beneath the compound. Forged documents are caught through handwriting analysis. Civilian clothes are identified by fabric inconsistencies. The Germans have turned recapture into a science. For every prisoner innovation, there is a countermeasure. The gap between attempt and failure narrows with each passing month. Inside the barracks, men pass time with makeshift classes. Engineers teach mathematics, lawyers teach languages, doctors teach first aid with no supplies. It is a university behind wire, a community built on shared captivity. Friendships form quickly and run deep. Trust becomes currency. A man who keeps his word under interrogation is worth more than gold. Merritt arrives at Stalag Luft 3 in late February 1944. He is processed, deloused, photographed. His glasses are confiscated and returned scratched. His notebook is taken and never seen again. He is assigned to a barracks housing 40 men in a space designed for 20. The bunks are triple stacked. The stove burns coal when coal is available. Winter cold seeps through gaps in the wooden walls. The senior Allied officer in the barracks is a Canadian flight lieutenant named Alistair Drummond. He has been captured for 18 months. He runs the barracks with quiet authority, settling disputes, rationing supplies, maintaining discipline. He notices Merritt immediately. The new arrivals usually talk too much or not at all. Merritt does neither. He watches, he listens, he sketches invisible diagrams with his finger on the bunk frame. Drummond asks what he is drawing. Merritt looks up and says simply, "Drag coefficients." Drummond decides this kid might be useful or insane, possibly both. Merritt Hayes Corbett was born in 1924 in Brattleboro, Vermont. His father operated a lumber mill. His mother taught piano and read poetry aloud during dinner. The house smelled of sawdust and sheet music. Conversations revolved around measurements, tolerances, and the structural integrity of wooden beams. Merritt learned early that precision mattered more than speed. He attended Brattleboro Union High School, not popular, not bullied, simply invisible. He joined the mathematics club and the science fair committee. He built model bridges from toothpicks and tested their load-bearing capacity with meticulous documentation. Teachers described him as thorough. Classmates described him as odd. He entered Vermont Technical College in 1941, studied civil engineering, spent weekends sketching suspension bridge designs instead of attending football games. He graduated in 1943 with solid grades and no clear direction. The war was consuming the world. The draft was inevitable. Merritt decided to enlist before the decision was made for him. He walked into an Army Air Force's recruitment office in Burlington and asked about engineering positions. The recruiter looked at his age, his education, his eyesight. He suggested flight training. Merritt hesitated. The recruiter pressed. Pilots were needed desperately. Engineers made good pilots. They understood systems. Merritt signed the forms. Flight training happened in stages. Primary training in Texas, basic training in Arizona, advanced training in California. Merritt passed each phase without distinction. He was not the best stick and rudder pilot. He was not the worst. Instructors noted his technical aptitude, but questioned his aggression. One evaluation called him hesitant during simulated combat maneuvers. Another flagged him for over-analysis during emergency procedures. He graduated in October 1943 and was assigned to the 56th Fighter Group, flying P-47 Thunderbolts out of England. The Thunderbolt was a beast. 7 tons of aircraft powered by a Pratt and Whitney R-2800 radial engine producing 2,000 horsepower. It could absorb punishment that would shred lighter fighters. It could dive faster than anything the Luftwaffe fielded, but it was not nimble. It did not turn tightly. Pilots called it the Jug because it flew like a milk jug with wings. Merritt loved it anyway. He loved its systems, its redundancies, its mechanical honesty. He spent off hours studying the technical manual, learning hydraulic schematics and electrical diagrams. Other pilots mocked him gently, the professor and his textbook. Merritt did not care. He believed that understanding his aircraft completely was the only advantage he had. His first combat mission was a bomber escort to Schweinfurt. He flew wingman position, stayed in formation, fired at a Focke-Wulf 190 that flashed past too quickly to hit. He returned with his aircraft intact and his hands shaking. His second mission went the same, his third. He was competent, reliable, forgettable. Then, on his fourth mission, his hydraulic system failed during takeoff. The landing gear would not retract. He called it in. Ground control told him to abort. Merritt made a different choice. He continued the mission. That choice would eventually save his life in ways he could not predict. February 12, 1944. Merritt is assigned to escort a formation of B-17 flying fortresses targeting ball-bearing factories near Regensburg. The weather is marginal. Cloud cover over the North Sea fragments the bomber stream. German fighters appear in coordinated groups, climbing out of the overcast, positioning themselves for slashing attacks. Merritt's flight engages a group of Messerschmitt 109s. The sky dissolves into chaos. Tracers arc in 3 dimensions. Aircraft tumble, trailing smoke and flame. Merritt fires, maneuvers, tries to maintain situational awareness. Then his engine takes hits. 20mm cannon shells punch through the cowling. Oil pressure drops. Coolant temperature spikes. The engine begins to seize. He tries to nurse the Thunderbolt back toward Allied lines. He calculates glide ratios, winds aloft, distance to the coast. The math is unforgiving. He will not make it. At 8,000 feet, the engine quits completely. Smoke fills the cockpit. Merritt jettisons the canopy and rolls inverted. He falls free, pulls the ripcord, feels the parachute deploy with a bone-jarring snap. He drifts down through cold February air, watching his aircraft spiral into a forest and explode. He lands in a frozen field 30 kilometers inside Germany. He has perhaps 20 minutes before local police or Wehrmacht patrols arrive. He buries his parachute in a snowbank. He checks his escape kit, compass, map, German currency, benzodrine tablets. He starts walking west. He makes it 6 kilometers before a Hitler Youth Patrol on bicycles spots him. They are boys, 14 and 15 years old, carrying hunting rifles and an inflated sense of duty. They surround him. Merritt raises his hands. One of the boys speaks broken English. He asks if Merritt is a terror flieger. Merritt does not answer. They march him to a police station in a nearby village. From there, he is transferred to Wehrmacht custody, then to Luftwaffe interrogation centers, then finally to Stalag Luft 3. The train ride to the camp takes 2 days in a locked boxcar with 30 other prisoners. No food, no water, 1 bucket for sanitation. Men talk quietly or not at all. Some pray, some sleep. Merritt sits in the corner and reconstructs his final flight in his mind. He replays the moments before the engine failure, the feel of the controls, the sound of the hits, the way the aircraft handled with battle damage. He is trying to understand something, but cannot yet articulate what. Stalag Luft 3 appears through the train window as a sprawl of wooden barracks surrounded by double fences and guard towers. Dogs patrol the perimeter. Searchlights sweep the compound at night. The gates open. The prisoners are marched inside. Roll call. processing, delousing. Merritt is assigned to Barracks 14. He meets Alistair Drummond, the senior officer. He meets the other men, pilots, navigators, bombardiers. All of them shot down, all of them trying to figure out how to survive captivity without losing their minds. Merritt settles into his bunk and stares at the ceiling. He is 19 years old and a prisoner of war. Merritt spends his first month observing. He does not speak much. He listens to the veterans, the men who have been imprisoned for a year or more. They tell stories of failed escape attempts, tunnels that collapsed, forged documents that fooled no one, disguises that lasted 5 minutes outside the wire. Every story ends the same way: recapture, punishment, sometimes execution. The message is clear: escape is nearly impossible. Merritt hears the message. He does not accept it. He begins sketching again. Without his notebook, he uses scraps of paper, margins of Red Cross letters, the backs of playing cards. He draws aircraft from memory: P-47s, Messerschmitts, Focke-Wulfs. He diagrams their flight characteristics, lift curves, drag coefficients, power-to-weight ratios. Other prisoners think he is passing time, drawing pictures to stay sane. They do not understand what he is calculating. Merritt is reconstructing his final flight, the moment when his hydraulic system failed, the moment when his landing gear would not retract. He remembers the feel of the aircraft with the wheels down, the sluggishness, the resistance, the way the controls responded differently. In aviation, drag is the enemy. It slows you down. It costs fuel. It makes you vulnerable. Every pilot is trained to minimize drag, retract the gear, clean up the aircraft, maximize speed. But Merritt remembers something else. When the Messerschmitts attacked him with his gear still down, they overshot. They could not adjust to his reduced speed. They flashed past, expecting a faster target. He had to brake hard, to maneuver violently, but the initial attack failed because he was slower than they anticipated. He starts thinking about this in reverse. What if you intentionally created drag during an escape? What if you moved slower than pursuers expected? In a prisoner of war camp, the doctrine is to run fast and far. Get distance, cover ground, disappear into the countryside before the alarm spreads. But the Germans know this. They position patrols along likely escape routes. They use motorcycles and vehicles to cover distance faster than any man on foot. They expect escapees to run hard. Merritt sketches a different scenario, an escape that moves slowly, that uses deliberate drag to alter the timing, that places the escapee somewhere the searchers have already passed. He does not have all the details yet. He does not know how to apply the principle to ground movement, but the core idea is forming. You do not outrun the enemy, you outlast them by being where they do not expect. He shares none of this. He keeps sketching, he keeps thinking. One night, Alistair Drummond sits down on the bunk next to him. Drummond asks what Merritt is working on. Merritt hesitates, then shows him a sketch. It is a crude diagram showing two paths from the camp perimeter. One is direct, fast. The other is circuitous, slow. Drummond studies it. He asks which path Merritt would take. Merritt points to the slow one. Drummond asks why. Merritt says simply, because they will search the fast one first. Planning begins in whispers. Drummond brings in 3 other prisoners, an Australian navigator named Colin Pritchard, who speaks fluent German, a South African bombardier named Peter van der Merwe, who has engineering experience, an American tail gunner named Eugene Macklin, who was a locksmith before the war. They meet after lights out, speaking in low voices, huddled near the stove where the guards assume men gather for warmth. Merritt explains his theory. Most escape attempts fail because they follow predictable patterns: fast movement, maximum distance, linear routes toward neutral territory. The Germans counter this with speed, vehicles, radio coordination. They cast a wide net and tighten it quickly. Merritt proposes the opposite: slow movement, minimal distance, a curved route that doubles back toward areas already searched. The idea is counterintuitive. It violates every instinct. Pritchard asks how this helps. Merritt explains. German search patterns radiate outward from the camp. They sweep zones methodically, mark them clear, and move on. If you can survive the initial sweep by staying close and hidden, you can move through cleared zones while the search expands elsewhere. You use their efficiency against them. Van der Merwe sees the logic but identifies the problem. Hiding close to the camp means hiding within the initial perimeter search. That area is swept thoroughly, dogs, guards, probes. Merritt agrees. The hiding spot has to be perfect. It has to be somewhere they search but do not recognize. Macklin suggests the wire itself, the space between the inner and outer fences. Guards patrol there, but they are looking outward, watching for escapes in progress, not for men already through. The plan crystallizes over 3 weeks. They will go out through a shallow tunnel under Barracks 14. Not a deep tunnel like the famous attempts. Those take months and require teams. This will be a short tunnel, just enough to get under the wire, dug in 5 nights. They will go at dawn during the shift change when guards are distracted. Once outside, they will move only 50 meters. They will hide in a drainage culvert that runs parallel to the outer fence. They will stay there for 24 hours while the search explodes around them. When the search moves outward, they will emerge and walk calmly toward the nearest town, using forged documents and civilian clothes. April 3rd, 1944. They go. The tunnel is crude, dirt-shored with bed slats, barely wide enough for a man. Merritt goes first. He crawls through wet earth, breathing shallow, tasting clay. He emerges outside the wire in pre-dawn darkness. Pritchard follows. Then Van der Merwe, then Macklin. Drummond stays behind to cover their absence at roll call. They move low and fast to the culvert. They slide inside. The space is tight, cold, filthy. Water trickles along the bottom. They settle in and wait. 30 minutes later, the alarm sounds. The search begins with sirens. Dogs bark, guards shout, trucks rumble out of the motor pool and race toward the perimeter roads. Searchlights sweep the tree line beyond the fences. Motorcycle patrols roar into the countryside, following standard escape vectors west toward Switzerland, north toward the Baltic, south toward neutral zones. Inside the culvert, Merritt and his crew press themselves flat against the cold concrete. Water soaks through their clothes. The sound of boots passes directly overhead. Guards walk the fence line, probing bushes, checking shadows. A dog sniffs near the culvert entrance. Its handler calls it back. The search moves outward. By noon, the immediate perimeter has been swept 3 times. The guards mark it clear. Patrols expand their radius to 5 kilometers, then 10. Radio chatter crackles between units. No contact, no sightings. The escapees have vanished. Inside the culvert, the 4 men do not move. They do not speak. Merritt watches the sun track across the small slice of sky visible through the drainage grate. He counts hours. He calculates search patterns in his head. At 1800 hours, the patrols begin returning to base. The outer search continues, but the inner cordon relaxes. Guards assume the escapees are kilometers away by now. At 2200 hours, darkness falls. Merritt gives the signal. They crawl out of the culvert, stiff and shivering. They move east, toward the nearby town of Sagan, walking on roads already searched. They wear civilian clothes assembled from dyed uniforms and stolen fabric. Van der Merwe carries forged papers identifying them as Dutch laborers. Macklin carries a work permit stamped with a homemade seal carved from a boot heel. They walk confidently, not skulking. 2 kilometers from the camp, they pass a German patrol returning from the search. The guards barely glance at them. Laborers walking to night shift. Nothing unusual. They make it to Sagan. They hide in a rail yard. At dawn, they board a freight train heading west. The plan is to reach the Rhine, then turn south toward Switzerland. They ride in an empty boxcar, hungry and exhausted, but free. For 72 hours, they move through Germany, changing trains, avoiding checkpoints, sleeping in barns and abandoned buildings. Then their luck runs out. A railway inspector checks the boxcar outside Frankfurt. He finds them. He calls the police. They are arrested, returned to Stalag Luft 3, and placed in solitary confinement for 14 days. But they are not executed. The Gestapo questions them. How did they evade the initial search? Where did they hide? Merritt says nothing. Pritchard says nothing. The Germans cannot understand it. 4 men disappeared and reappeared 72 hours later, 200 kilometers away. The search protocols failed. Something in the methodology was exploited. The interrogators press for details. They get silence. After 2 weeks, the 4 are returned to general population. They are treated as heroes. Other prisoners want to know how they did it. Merritt explains the principle quietly. Do not run far, run smart, use their patterns against them, hide close, move through cleared zones. The idea spreads. Within a month, 3 other escape attempts use variations of the tactic. 2 succeed in evading initial capture for over 48 hours. 1 makes it to friendly lines. The Germans notice the pattern shift but cannot counter it without changing their entire search doctrine. April 29, 1945. The war in Europe is collapsing. Soviet forces push from the east. American and British forces drive from the west. Germany fractures. Supply lines disintegrate. Prison camps fall into chaos. Some guards abandon their posts. Others hold firm, following orders even as the Reich crumbles around them. At Stalag Luft 3, the commandant receives orders to evacuate prisoners westward, away from the advancing Soviets. 10,000 men are marched through the German countryside in freezing rain. They walk for days. Some collapse, some die. The guards grow nervous. They hear artillery in the distance. They know the end is coming. On May 2nd, an American armored column from the Third Army reaches the marching prisoners. The guards surrender without resistance. The prisoners are liberated. They are processed at field stations, given medical examinations, debriefed by intelligence officers. Merritt sits across from a captain who asks routine questions. Name, rank, serial number, unit, date of capture. Then the questions shift. The captain asks about escape attempts. Merritt mentions his attempt with Drummond, Pritchard, van der Merwe, and Macklin. The captain asks him to elaborate. Merritt explains the tactic, hiding close, moving slowly, using cleared search zones. The captain stops writing. He asks Merritt to repeat that. Merritt does. The captain calls over a major. Merritt explains again. The major asks if other prisoners use the same method. Merritt says yes. At least 6 attempts that he knows of. The major asks how many succeeded. Merritt estimates half reached significant distance before recapture. 1 made it all the way out. The major makes notes. He tells Merritt this information will be forwarded to Training Command. Merritt shrugs. He does not think much of it. He is flown to a processing center in France. From there, he is shipped to England, then home to the United States. He arrives in New York Harbor in June 1945. His parents meet him at the dock. His mother cries. His father shakes his hand. They take him home to Vermont. He sleeps in his childhood bed. He eats his mother's cooking. He tries to readjust to civilian life. It does not come easily. The nightmares start 3 weeks after his return. He dreams of the culvert, of the dogs, of the train inspector finding them. He wakes sweating and disoriented. His father suggests he talk to someone. Merritt declines. He buries himself in work. He enrolls at the University of Vermont to finish his engineering degree. He attends classes. He completes assignments. He does not talk about the war. When classmates ask, he gives short answers. He was a pilot. He was shot down. He was a prisoner. He came home. That is all. In October 1945, he receives a letter from the Army Air Forces. It is a formal inquiry requesting additional details about his escape attempt and the tactical principles employed. Merritt writes a 3-page response. He includes sketches. He explains the drag principle as it applies to evasion and pursuit. He mails it and forgets about it. 6 months later, He receives a second letter. This one informs him that his techniques are being incorporated into survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training programs. He is invited to consult. He declines politely. He wants nothing to do with the military anymore. He wants to build bridges and forget about war. 1948. The United States Air Force, newly independent from the Army, establishes formal SERE training: survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The curriculum is built from lessons learned in World War II. Instructors compile case studies. They analyze successful escapes and failed attempts. They identify patterns. Merritt's escape appears in the training materials as Case Study 17. It is taught without his name attached. The principle is simple: evade by exploiting search patterns, hide in cleared zones, move counter to expectations, use deliberate slowness as a tactical advantage. The Korean War validates the training. Downed pilots use the techniques. Some survive behind enemy lines for weeks by staying close to their crash sites, hiding in areas already searched, moving only when patrols pass. The success rate is not perfect. Nothing in war is perfect. But it is measurably better than previous doctrine. Air Force analysts run the numbers. Pilots trained in the new evasion techniques have a 23% higher survival rate when shot down over hostile territory. 23% represents hundreds of lives over the course of the war. The technique evolves. Special operations units adopt variations. Navy SEALs use it for underwater evasion. Army Rangers use it in jungle environments. The core principle remains unchanged. You do not outrun pursuit. You outlast it by being where the enemy has already looked. The tactic spreads internationally. British SAS incorporates it into their training. Israeli commandos adapt it for desert operations. By the Vietnam War, it is standard doctrine across NATO forces. Merritt knows none of this. He lives quietly in Burlington, Vermont. He works as a structural engineer for the State Highway Department. He designs bridges, culverts, and road systems. He marries a librarian named Catherine in 1951. They have 2 children. He attends parent-teacher conferences and Little League games. He mows his lawn on Saturdays. He is a good neighbor, quiet, and helpful. He does not talk about the war. His children know he served. They know he was shot down. They do not know about the escape or the tactic or the training programs that carry his insight. In 1968, an Air Force historian researching SERE program origins tracks Merritt down. The historian writes a letter requesting an interview. Merritt declines. The historian persists. Merritt finally agrees to a phone conversation. The historian asks detailed questions. How did you develop the idea? What made you think it would work? Did you test it? Merritt answers briefly. He saw it work accidentally in flight. He applied the principle to a different problem. He tested it once. It worked. The historian asks if Merritt realizes how widely his technique is used. Merritt says he does not. The historian tells him, "Thousands of servicemen have been trained in your method. Dozens have survived because of it." Merritt is silent for a long moment. Then he says simply, "Good." That is all he says. The historian thanks him and hangs up. Merritt never speaks of it again. 2007. Merritt Hayes Corbett dies at the age of 83. Heart failure, quiet, and quick. His funeral is attended by family, neighbors, and a few colleagues from the Highway Department. His obituary in the Burlington Free Press runs 4 paragraphs. It mentions his work as an engineer. It mentions his service in World War II. It notes he was a prisoner of war. It does not mention the escape. It does not mention the tactic. Most people who read it do not know what he contributed. But at Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington, instructors still teach Case Study 17. They show diagrams of search patterns and evasion routes. They explain the principle of using cleared zones. They demonstrate how deliberate slowness can defeat speed-based pursuit. The students are young airmen, 19 and 20 years old, the same age Merritt was when he developed the idea. They take notes. They practice the techniques in field exercises. They do not know the name of the man who invented it. The training manual does not say. In 2011, a Navy SEAL team uses a variation of the tactic during an operation in Afghanistan. After completing their mission, they evade pursuit by hiding within 500 meters of the target site for 18 hours, while enemy forces search outward. They walk out through cleared checkpoints using forged credentials. The operation is classified. The after-action report credits sound tactical judgment. It does not reference merit. It does not need to. The principle is embedded in their training. It is second nature. Aviation museums across the country display P-47 Thunderbolts, restored aircraft painted in period markings. Plaques explain their role in the war. Visitors walk past and take photographs. Children climb on the ropes around the exhibits. None of the displays mention the hydraulic failure. None mention the landing gear that would not retract. None mention the drag that became a tactic that saved lives for 70 years. Merritt's notebooks were lost. His sketches were destroyed or scattered. His children cleaned out his office after his death and found only highway plans and structural calculations. Nothing about the war, nothing about the escape. He left no memoir, he gave no speeches, he sought no recognition. He simply lived his life and let the idea outlive him. But the idea persists. It is taught in survival schools on 4 continents. It appears in military doctrine under different names: delayed evasion, proximal concealment, counterintuitive movement. The language changes, but the physics remain constant. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. A search pattern expanding outward tends to leave its origin exposed. A pursuer expecting speed will overshoot slowness. These are not opinions, they are mechanical truths. Merritt understood this at 19. He tested it at 20. He proved it worked, and then he walked away. He did not need validation. He did not need fame. He needed to build bridges and raise his children and live quietly. The war took enough from him. He would not let it take the rest of his life. So his name faded. But every pilot who evades capture, every soldier who survives behind enemy lines, every operator who outlasts pursuit by hiding close and moving slow, they carry his legacy whether they know it or not. Because physics does not forget, and neither does survival.